Today we are into week 2 on a, I think, 4-week series looking at this worldwide phenomenon psychologically, but also within business and in education. The thinking pops up everywhere of this idea of positive psychology. So this morning, like we always do at New Hope, we're reading from 2 books. One of them is a book called Authentic Happiness, written by Dr. Martin Seligman, and the other is a book called The Bible, written by God. So how do those books talk to each other? What do they say? God's truth in positive psychology to God's truth in the Apostle Paul's letter to the Romans. What does truth in Corinthians say to God's truth in the other book? So that's the dialogue today as it was last week. If you missed last week, you can get the intro stuff. So everything you hear now that sounds like, hey, that's not right, we already dealt with last week. And you can assume that we're already balanced on those points. I had always thought, in a biased way, that this positive thinking psychology thing was just about, putting your fingers in your ears and doing the ignoring or the denial of reality or whatever it would take to just think more positively. And it does do a little bit of that. Dr. Seligman said that, but if you read his book, they do it based on facts, not on what you're feeling about it, but take what people say that's negative, weigh the facts, then do something with it, as opposed to assuming they're right all the time. Anyway, I thought it was always about getting rid of that negative and seeking a kind of superficial, fairyland kind of pleasure, a thin, very thin kind of happiness. But now, and fully half of his book on positive psychology is dealing with this idea of signature strengths, I see that the central focus is much deeper than just that superficial stuff. He calls it gratification. We don't have to seek superficial happinesses. Everybody needs those. We enjoy them, but they're very temporal. But what really gives us long-term happiness in life, he would say, is this idea he calls gratification. And gratification comes, according to Dr. Seligman, when we live out of our core strengths. The more you are who you really are, the happier you'll be. And the idea, as soon as I read that, has all kinds of parallels to our Christian faith. God wants you and made you to be fully you. We said last week, Jesus said, I came to bring life and to bring it abundantly, fully you. And God made you as a very unique human being with very particular signature strengths. As I went through the list of strengths, they sounded a lot like certain spiritual gifts. To be part of a bigger body, that is humanity, and that is also the church. And he gave you something very unique. There's something that Chuck brings to this church that's different than what I bring, that's different than what Heather brings, that's different than what Naz brings to this community. And that's on purpose that God gives those signature strengths. And they're God-given strengths. So it makes perfect sense that when you live out of your God-given strengths, you feel what it's like to be a human being and what God had originally intended. You feel most alive and most content and more you. Life will be most right when you are living out of those God-given signature strengths that are built into you. So the question, refinding happiness, real lasting gratification type happiness, it then becomes, who are you? What are those strengths, those unique things that define who you are? And of course, being a good psychologist, Dr. Seligman had a test. So did anyone read our email this week and do the test? I got about 8. Okay, what was your number 1 strength? Somebody throw it out. Do you remember it? Curiosity. What was it? Curiosity. Cool. Thanks, Jay. Anyone else? Social intelligence. You, Bill? Cool. I knew that. He's a friend. One more. Barb's was appreciation of beauty. Yeah, no surprise there, knowing Barb. These were mine. My top strength was spirituality, sense of purpose, and faith. Yeah, no kidding, eh? Good thing to have in the job that you have. The second one was gratitude, which is a brand new one for me. I always focused on what I didn't have. 15 years ago, before this shift, everything was about not having enough, right? And all of a sudden you switch, and I think one is connected to two very much here. Seeing the positive, how much is right in your world. Dr. Seligman writes about gratitude a lot. My third one was creativity, ingenuity, and originality. Thinking of new ways to do things is a crucial part of who you are. You're never content with doing something the conventional way if a better way is possible. Yeah. I just might put my picture beside that one. And then love of learning is number 4, and the fifth strength is zest, enthusiasm, and energy. And Seligman would say that in order for me to find a fulfilling, content, gratification-like, happy life, I need to be living out of those things, out of who I am, which, thank God, I get to do. My career got changed out of developing real estate to this 15, 17 years ago now. So into a place where that could happen, but not just into a church where you have freedom and space to be who you are. And I am thankful, hugely filled with gratitude for that. And I would hope that this is a community where everyone who's a part of it in some way would be able to feel that space and freedom to live out of their strengths. So the trick to being more gratified, more happy in your life, is for you to do the same here in this community as you're a part of it, but yeah, as much or even more so maybe in the rest of your life, in your family and in your work, and as you do your research and as you study and as you work wherever you work and do whatever you do. You are not called to be a preacher. I couldn't stand the competition, and and we don't need any more preachers. We don't need any more preachers in our world, but we need a few. But we need a whole bunch of different gifts in this community and in our world to do the work of God, to be fully who we are. Reading his book again this week, all these strengths, positive emotions that he would be citing as I just went through the book, and just I was picking out words, and I'm going, that's familiar, that's familiar, that's familiar, that's familiar. Most of the words that he used to describe what it would mean to live a fulfilled human life and defining what these signature strengths are were words that I had heard before, heard in that other book, the Bible. They sounded like, in some cases, spiritual gifts that Paul writes about. And in other places, they sounded like the fruit of the Spirit that Paul writes about. So I made a chart. Those are the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And those are the words that I would read throughout the positive psychology text. Love was a huge one. Joy. Love is what we're talking about today. Joy was huge. Contentment, satisfaction, temperance, gratitude, all of those other words. A couple of them don't fit as closely as I wanted, but I didn't want to have any blanks in the chart. But overall, there was this match. It was like reading that and remembering these fruit of the Spirit. God was saying, if my Spirit lives in you, you who I made, this is what you will look like. This is what it means to be human. If you live this way, you will be more in step with me, and you will better reflect my image in your life, and you will find real life.